Hello everyone. Let us start with understanding what web development is. So the very first thing which comes to our mind is why should we learn web development? Reasons for learning web development are: first, you can use web development to showcase your work or projects. Second is for your job purpose. If you showcase your work on the website, you can easily show it to recruiters, and recruiters can connect more with the work you do. Next, you can add a very valuable skill, which is web development, in your resume, which will again help you for your job purpose. And next is that it sounds cool. If you are able to do web development, you can showcase your projects and it looks very cool to everyone you show your projects to. So let us understand how exactly does the web work. So first of all, the user asks for the information to the browser. So when you open a browser and you type a URL, you are requesting some information from the browser. Then the browser requests something from the server. The server then processes the requests based on a set of rules. Once the server processes everything, the server returns the information. Then, after getting this information, the browser displays the information it got from the server. So this is how the web works. Whenever you open a browser, you type in a web address. Why do we need to use web addresses? Because every computer has a specific name. Now, if you want to access a specific website, you have to specify that name of the computer which holds all the information about your website. Now, the name of a website or the server is the IP address, which is not human readable. It's very hard to remember the IP address of a website. So that is why instead of the IP address, we have the web address. Each web address is connected to a IP address. For example, a web address can look like https www.google.com or facebook.com. So the takeaway is the web address corresponds to an IP address, which is the name of a computer. Let's understand the individual components of a web address. So first, whenever you type a web address, it begins with HTTP or HTTPS. Next, we have a colon and two forward slashes. This is to separate the first part, the HTTPS, and what comes after it. Next, we have quick draw written over here. You can have anything like www or www3 or any other subdomain name after HTTPS or the protocol. After you have the subdomain name, you should use a dot to separate what comes after the subdomain, which is the domain name. So let's have a quick recap of what a web address is made of. So first is the HTTPS, which is called the protocol of a website. HTTP is for Hypertext Transfer Protocol and HTTPS S stands for secure. Next, there is the subdomain name. Each domain name can have infinite number of subdomain names. Over here, Authonize.com is the domain name. A domain name is unique, like Authonize.com, facebook.com, google.com. But there can be infinite number of subdomain names for each domain. So this is what a web address is made of. So the second question comes to our mind, how to get our own domain name and where do we get this from? To get a domain name, you have to lease it out and the typical cost of it is from rupees 500 to 1000. Some very popular domain name companies are domainname.com, GoDaddy, and Google Domains. These companies provide you with the domain name if you pay them some amount. Depending upon the type of domain you want to get, the cost may vary. So these are some of the popular domain name companies. So now that we understand what a web address is, let us break down of what compromises a website. So first of all, there is the structure of a website. What I mean by structure is that inside a website, there are individual components and each of those components are placed in a certain manner. So a website has a structure in which each component comes at a specific location. Next, a website can be thought of as having design and responsiveness. So once we have the structure, we need to add some designs into it to make the website look good. Also, your website should be responsive for different screen sizes. What we mean by a responsiveness is that it should look good and behave differently for different screen sizes. Next, a website must have some logic into it. There are static websites which are used to showcase some fixed information, but most websites have some interaction into them. So if you are creating a chat app, then it has some logic and that also compromises some functionality of the website. So how do we make our own website? Obviously, you will have to code to create your website. So these are the three building blocks of a web page. The first one is HTML, the second one is CSS, and the third one is JavaScript. Let us have a look at each of them and correlate it to the way we broke down the web page earlier. HTML. HTML decides the skeleton of the website and the structure. So, where the components are placed and what type of component it is determined by HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Next comes the CSS. CSS decides the aesthetic look, the colors, the animation, and the responsiveness of a website. So HTML provides you with a structure, whereas CSS adds some design, the aesthetic look, and makes the website responsive. Then there is the JavaScript. JavaScript determines the functionality of a website. For example, when you click a button, you want some action to happen. Maybe you want to pay or go to a next page. That logic is determined by JavaScript. When you send a message, you get back a response, and that too comes inside JavaScript. So, to create a fully functional interactive website, you need the skeleton or the structure, which is the HTML. You need the CSS to add design and responsiveness. And you need to add JavaScript to add the logic to your website. When you have all of this, you have a fully functional interactive website. After you learn HTML, CSS, and JS, you can make any kind of website. So you will be able to create all kinds of website after you are done with HTML,